let's start the class. Every piece has a value. So the king is priceless. The value for the bishop, let me reset the board. So the value for the knight and bishop are 3 points, rook is 5 points, and queen is 9 points, and the king is priceless. And for the pawns, it's 1 point. Okay, and we call this A. This is A file, B file, C file, D file. D file, E file, F file, G file, and H file. And we call these ranks first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank, fifth rank, sixth rank, seventh rank, and eighth rank. Just like how you would in a military situation. Okay, so always you can notice that at your right hand side, at the edge of the board, it's a light square. Similarly for black, it's for black's right hand side, you will notice that it's a light square. So this is how you'll know that you have arranged the board properly. So it should be light square on the edge, and at the same time the white king will be placed on the dark square, black king will be placed on the light square, the queen will be placed on its own color. So the black queen will be placed on the dark square, the black square, and the white queen will be placed on the light square, the white square. Now let's look at the movements. So the rook moves, horizontally and vertically like a plus sign. And one thing you can notice about the pieces is that the piece cannot jump over. So the rook cannot go here; it can't jump. It will be blocked from here. So the rook will not be able to travel here directly. That's not possible. So to go here, what it has to happen is rook has to go here, here, and then here. So like this, it can travel. It cannot make the jump. But if it's an opponent piece, say if I want to go here, then I can just, since this is an enemy piece, I can capture it and then I can go here. So if it's an enemy piece, I can capture. If it's our own piece, we won't be able to capture. So this rule applies for most pieces. And we look at the next piece, the bishop. So there are actually some beginner videos which you can actually go through and rewatch. The bishop moves diagonally. There are two bishops. So one is a light square bishop and another one is a dark square bishop. So the light square bishop travels on the light squares. The dark square bishop travels on the dark squares. And both these will not intersect. Okay. And similarly, the bishops will basically can move in any direction on the light square. And this bishop can move on any direction on the dark square. And so there's no limitation on how far it can go, as long as it's in the same thing. But if there's an enemy piece, it can capture. If it's our own piece, it won't be able to capture. So for example, let's say if it's like this. If I want this bishop to go here, then it's not possible because my pawn is in between. So this route is not possible. So if I want to go here, I have to go here, here, and then here. Okay? But if I want to go here, and this pawn is enemy's piece, so I can capture it, and then I can go. So that's how it works. Now we've seen the bishop. Next is we'll see the queen. So queen is a combination of the bishop and the rook. So the queen can move like the rook, which is forward and backwards, vertical and horizontally. And it can move like the bishop, like diagonally. So queen is the most strongest piece on the board. It can go in any direction it wants. But the same rule applies where it cannot jump across another piece. Okay, so coming back. So the queen is the most powerful piece. It can go in any direction it wants. And it can go in any thing. But the queen will not be able to jump another piece. So for example, say if I have a knight over here. Okay, and let's say there's an enemy's bishop over here. Okay. So I can't jump from here to here. That's not possible because this knight is in between. So, but if I want to go here, then I can just go here and then come here. And this piece is like it was in my attacking range, so I'll be able to capture this one. So the other thing is coming to chess. White moves first and black after. Yeah, it's sharing properly. So yeah, so white moves first and then black will move after. So white will make a first move, then black will make the second move, and then white will make the next move, black will make next after that. So it's always one first, and then the other guy plays, and then it goes on like this. So go castles, go b5, bishop b3, d6. So like that. So white will make the first move, then black after, then white will make again. That's how pieces move. Now coming back to the beginner basics, we have looked at most of the pieces. Now let's look at pawn. So the thing about pawns is that every pawn for its first move, it can go two squares. So for this pawn, for its first move, it can jump 2 squares. But after it has made a move, it can only go 1 step forward at a time. Okay. So similarly for this pawn, if this guy has yet to make any moves, then he can go 2 steps forward. But once he has gone 2 steps, he has to only go 1 step at a time. Oops. Okay. And supposedly, if this pawn moves here, then he has already moved. Now he can't make, he can't jump 2 squares. He can only go 1 step at a time, like this. So pawns can only, for its first move, it can jump 2 squares. If not, it can only go 1 step at a time. And pawns attack, like this diagonally, but only for 1 square. So it doesn't have a range. It has a long range. For example, bishop has long range, right? So if we take a bishop, so say if we have a bishop over here, this bishop has a long range. It can attack on its entire diagonal. On the entirety of its diagonal, it can attack. But for a pawn, it's not like that. So pawns are much more limited. For pawn, it can only attack like this. So pawns are limited. So if you go 2 steps forward, now it will attack these 2 squares. Now, another rule that you have to remember is that pawns cannot go back. Once the pawn has moved forward, it cannot go back. Okay, so pawns never come back. They always go forward, forward, forward. And the specialty of the pawns is once it goes to the other side of the board, it can get special powers. So if this pawn, this is a white pawn, which starts at the 2nd rank. If it goes to the 8th rank on the enemy side, the pawn can become a queen. So if the pawn goes here, it becomes a queen. Or it can become a bishop or a rook or a knight or another piece. Why is this so? Is because traditionally in military, if you can attack your enemy from the flank or from the behind, you get tremendous advantage. Because opponent, in those days, people fight by forming formations. So they have a formation of 3 people or 3 ranks, and they fight each other. So what happens is the battle will be very brutal, and the guys at the front, if they are tired, they'll come back, and guys at the back will support those at the front, and that's how it goes. But what will happen is, if somebody's attacking them from behind, they won't be able to defend from 2 sides, and they will lose. So that's why the rule in chess is that if the pawns can go to the other side of the board, it can become any material, any piece. So they can become a queen or a bishop or a knight or a rook, but they cannot become the king. Except for the king, they can become in any other piece. So that's the beauty of the pawn. And so we've seen the pawn. The next piece we'll see is the knight. So knight is a bit tricky for beginners. Knight moves in an L-shaped form, like this. So as you can see here, this is an L shape. So knight moves L shape. So the way to remember it is like 2 steps forward, 1 step to the right or left. So you can go like this and on any direction. So knight can go here, 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 can go here. So knights can go in an L-shaped form, and knight is the only piece that can jump across another piece. So for example, let's say if I have, like this pieces, my knight can jump across them. So, or another example, let's see here, if I have pawns. So I can jump from here to here. Knight is the only piece on the board that can jump other pieces, and it's also the only piece that can attack multiple pieces at the same time. And the knight moves like L. Or another way of seeing it is that knight moves 2 steps forward, 1 step to the right, or 1 step to the left. So let me show you another position. We'll have a knight here, rook, we have queen, we have a king. Now in this position, this knight is in a family fork. It's attacking all the pieces. It's attacking the king, it's attacking the queen, it's attacking the rook, and this rook. So this is called as a family fork. And right now, since it's a check, the king is forced to move. And now white will be able to capture any piece at once. So knight is the only piece that can attack multiple pieces at the same time. Other pieces can do the same, like pawns can attack 2 pieces at the same time and those things. But knight can attack multiple more, like like 4 people for 4 or 8 pieces at the same time. It's very powerful, and it's the only piece that can jump. And it's also a very good defender. So knight is a very good defender in a game, and if you place it well, it can also be an amazing attacker. So now we have seen the knight. Yeah, so one practice that you can do at home is place the knight here at the edge of the board and go like this, take it to the other side. So you should move the knight to the other side. You can just practice it at the board if you have a chessboard. If not, it's fine. So for example, you can go here, here, like this, and then go here. So like that, you can move and you can practice with the knight. I'm drinking my evening tea actually. So yeah, so moving forward, we have seen all the other pieces. Now let's talk about the king. Kings can go only one step at a time, but on any direction. So king is like a queen, but it does not have the long range. So king can only go one step at a time, but in any direction. So for example, this black king can go here, 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 and here. Similarly, this white king can go any of these squares. Okay, so the king can go here, 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 here. Okay, and there is a general rule that kings and kings, this will not happen. This will not happen. This is an illegal move. Kings and kings will not come closer. Okay, this is the maximum range 2 kings can have, because this king is controlling these squares and this guy is controlling these squares. So these squares are in conflict. Hence, kings and kings will not come together or will not touch. Okay. So we've seen all the minor pieces. Now let's talk about check and what you should do for checks, and then we'll talk about checkmates. Okay. A check to the king. So this is a check to the king. Now, king, as I've mentioned, is priceless piece. It is the most important piece in the entire game. And the whole purpose of chess is to defeat the enemy, is to checkmate the king. So now the king is in check. When the king is in check, you are left with 3 options. One is that you should remove the material that's giving the check. For example, this piece, or you should blockade the check, or you should move the king. Those are the 3 options that you have. So let me give you some examples. So right now in this position, okay, I have multiple options. Now I have a check to the king. Either I can move the king somewhere where it's not a check. So the king, this black king, will not be able to go here or here or here, because the enemy is controlling these squares. White is controlling these squares. So black king cannot go there. Okay. Black king cannot go here because the entire file is controlled by the queen, or it's attacked by the queen. So the only place the black king can go is here or here. Okay. So first option when under check is that you can move your king to a safety location. So this could be here or here. The second option is you can block the check. So the first one we saw is that when in check, you can move the king from away from the check, or you can stop the check. So that will be like this. Wait up. All right. So now it's no longer check. I've blocked the check by placing a piece in between the check and the king. So now it's no longer check and I'm safe. So this is allowed. Okay. And the third option is, let's say hypothetically if it's like this. Okay. Now I have three options. One is I can move my king, obviously, or I can stop with the rook, or alternately, I can capture the piece that's giving the check, which is through my bishop. This bishop is in this diagonal, it's controlling this diagonal. So, and the check is given by the queen, which is on the same diagonal that the bishop is controlling. So I can capture this queen. So this is the three things that you can do when in check. One is you can move the king, or prevent the or blockade the check, or remove the piece that's giving the check. Okay, please lock the door. So those are the three options. Now let's talk about checkmate. So right now the king will not be able to go here because this three squares are controlled by the queen and the king. So the black king cannot go anywhere over there. If it's white to play, and if we play this move, it's a checkmate. Why we call this a checkmate is because the king is in check, first point. The king cannot escape. So for example, the queen queen plays diagonally and vertically. Okay, so all these squares are controlled by the queen. So the king does not have any escape squares. Second, the king is not able to capture this piece because it's supported by my king. So white king is supporting that square, supporting that material, and opponent does not have a piece to remove this. So let's say hypothetically, if there was a bishop over here. Now this is not a checkmate because I can simply capture the piece. Hold on. So this is not a checkmate because I can capture the queen. Similarly, say the original position, let's keep, yeah. Similarly, this is not, again, it's not a checkmate because I can stop the check. But this will be a checkmate because the king cannot escape anywhere and the king will not be able to capture my piece. If the king is able to capture my piece, or if some other piece is able to capture the piece that's giving a check, then it's no longer a checkmate. But if not, it's a checkmate. So these are the three basic things that you have to understand. So when in check, the king can either move or the king can block. The king can block or remove the piece that's giving the check. Okay. When it's a checkmate like this, then simply that the king is not able to escape or run or like blame on anybody else. So these are basics. Some of you guys may already know this, but I just wanted to cover this again in this class so that we'll go forward with more advanced. Let's see some mate in one positions today, and we'll wind up today's session. Okay, so this is mate in one move. It's a very simple beginner's position. So you have to make the right move. White has to play, and white has to make the right move, and that will checkmate the enemy king. So to find the answer, the first thing you have to do is understand what's happening, understand what pieces are doing what role, what work are they doing. Like for example, if this pawn, it's controlling these two squares, this pawn is controlling these two squares, this pawn is controlling these two squares, this pawn is controlling these two squares. These are all information that we have to first gather. And we gather information by asking questions. So we ask the question, okay, what is this pawn doing? What is this pawn doing? What is this pawn doing? What is this guy doing? So by asking questions, you get clarity, you get understanding. So we ask questions, now what is this queen doing? So the queen is controlling this diagonal, the queen is controlling this file, and the queen can go here, the queen can go here. So this is what the queen can do. And similarly, the rook is supporting the queen, and it's also supporting this rook. Our king can go here, here, or here. And our king is currently safe. There's no immediate check or any checkmate or any threats yet. And if you look at this bishop is controlling this diagonal. And it's also in between the king and our rook. So if we could move this bishop, that will be a check to the enemy king. And our rook, this rook that's on h1, it's indirectly attacking the enemy king. And what's in between is our bishop. So if we could move our bishop, that will be a check. Okay, so now let's look at what's on the other side of the game. The black pieces, the black pawns are controlling these squares, and the knight is controlling these squares. So the knight is controlling these squares, can come here, here, here. So this is what the knight is doing. And our queen, it's the black queen can go all these places. This square and this square is under control. And this rook is indirectly attacking the king, but the pawn is in between. So there is some tension over here. This rook is currently not doing much. It's only, it doesn't have much of a play, but it can come out in the future. But sadly, the black king is highly exposed. So the king has no, it's under direct threat. So the king is in a very precarious position. So this is what the situation of the board is. Now it's white to play. So one more thing we have to see is where can the black king go? So black king cannot come here because this bishop is controlling this square. Okay, black king cannot come here because the queen is controlling this square, and the black king cannot come here because the pawn is controlling the square. So the king cannot go in any of these directions. The only two squares the black king can go is over here and here. So it only has these two squares that it can move to. Now to give a checkmate, we have to give a check to the king. At the same time, we have to stop all its escape squares, and the check has to be in a way that it does not get blocked or stopped. Okay, so the correct answer in this question is bishop takes f7, checkmate. So now what happened is, this is the only route the king was able to go. We are stopping it with our bishop. So the bishop is controlling this entire diagonal, the queen is controlling entire diagonal, and this pawn is controlling this diagonal. So all these squares are controlled. The only place king can go goes here, but it's exposed by our rook. Our rook is controlling this whole thing, and so the rook is giving a check to the king, and it's a checkmate because there are no escape squares to the king, and this check cannot be blocked or removed. So this is a checkmate. So this is how you checkmate the enemy king. I'll give you some mate-in-one positions through WhatsApp group. You try to solve them and send me the answer through WhatsApp, and we will continue more on tomorrow's session. So if you have any doubts, you can ask, and there are some videos that I want you guys to watch on some of the basics, which you can, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. God bless and have a nice day.